Doesn't matter, I'm gonna fix it!
Alright, that's 10 episodes of Steven Universe Future officially released. A good chunk of the epilogue story has been told, and many minds in the fandom have been blown to pieces, including my own. Without the omnipresent stress and fear of a space war looming over our heads, this series gives us the chance to just sit back and enjoy these personal stories about the passage of time and Steven's evolving mental state. And Sunstone making safety videos. I'll make a full series overview once the whole thing airs, but for now, Future encapsulates everything I wanted and expected from an epilogue series for Steven Universe, and it's not even finished yet. For the time being though, we have one of those infamous SU hiatuses on our hands, which gives the fandom plenty of time to theorize on what's going to happen next. And one popular theory that's looking more and more possible by the minute is Steven's eventual corruption. I definitely wasn't on board with this theory when I first heard about it, and was really hoping that this big ol' worm guy was actually the creator of the diamonds, which would open up plenty of doors for unique questions about the gem race's entire existence. But looking at what we know so far, yeah, I'm starting to see what you guys are talking about. There's been no mention of a possible gem creator in Future, or ever in the series for that matter. And it's definitely not like Steven Universe to just drop something in our laps without any kind of foreshadowing beforehand. On top of that, Steven's mental problems have been the central point of Future so far, and this worm creature is front and center of this antagonist roll call, which could be a subtle visual hint of what's to come. Capping off Steven's wild, unstable, and monstrous mental state with the literal wild, unstable monster makes sense for the series. The facial structure of the monster and Steven are very similar, as many have pointed out. There have been multiple tidbits of story and lore which might hint at the eventual fate of Steven. Steven probably hated people teasing him that he had no neck, so he transformed into something that's 90% neck just to spite them. A lot of these things really do add up, I have to admit. Like with all popular theories, I'm not certain that this will occur, but if it does end up happening, which direction would be the most interesting for the story to take? Could Steven's corruption be self-inflicted, done by an outsider, on purpose, by accident? Will it even happen at all? Well, let's break out the laptop, the document, and the fanboy mind high on the sugary sodas and see what we can craft. Also, fair warning, I know that there's a ton of hanging plot threads and characters that are more than likely going to get closure in future episodes, but I'm going to cover those in a different video. This one's just going to focus on Steven's possible corruption and the characters that might be involved with making that happen. So, let's try and find out how Steven went from crawling in my skin to a literal thing that crawls as we discuss Steven's corruption crisis. Let's start by talking about corruption as a whole. Corruption in this series was essentially a mistake. As shown in Legs from Here to Homeworld, when White, Blue, and Yellow launched their combo attack, the intent was to obliterate every gem on the Earth's surface, as told by Blue. Corruption was never on their agenda, and they didn't even know about it until Steven showed it to them. So based on what we know, my guess is that corruption is just an unfortunate side effect of Pink blocking the attack with her shield, causing the gems to not be destroyed, but just really messed up. Speaking of that shield scene, I want to break it down and see if we can assume anything about Pink Diamond's powers, because we're going to need them later to talk about Steven. First of all, when all the diamonds are charging up their beams, we see that each one starts off as its own separate diamond shape, meaning each one is likely a separate attack. Then they all combine into one powerful laser. My guess is that every diamond is able to perform this gem-destroying laser attack on their own, but if fired together, it makes the attack much bigger and stronger and lets it travel a longer distance. The effects don't change, it just becomes more powerful. I mean, if this was some kind of exclusive multi-diamond super weapon, my guess is that you would need all 4 diamonds to pull it off, but here, we've only got 3. So with this in mind, if each of the other diamonds could fire their laser, that would mean that Pink could likely do it as well. And if Pink's shield was the factor which changed the beam from destruction to corruption, it would make sense for any shield that Pink spawns to be capable of the same thing. Keep those things in mind, because they'll come in handy later on. Now let's talk about where I think Steven is headed next. Little Graduation and Prickly Pear gave us the deepest dives into Steven's emotions that we've witnessed so far. Things like his desire to be needed by his friends and solve all their problems, something which he ties his entire self-worth to. His frustration with not having a new direction in his life while everybody else seems to have their lives all figured out, and even a few moments of annoyance with the other crystal gems and their behaviors. Not to mention all the previous internal problems brought up in episodes like Rosebuds and Volleyball. Bottom line, dude's got a lot of issues to work out, and while the natural thing to do would be to talk things out with the other crystal gems, judging from the last line of Prickly Pear, I don't think that's going to be happening very soon. So instead, my guess is that he's going to take some time away from Beach City, away from Little Homeworld, away from pretty much everything he's used to, and see if he can settle these emotions in his head. I mean, Cactus Steven flew the coop at the end of the episode and went off to parts unknown. And seeing how on point he was with mirroring Steven's real thoughts and actions, I bet Steven feels that going away is the best solution to his problem as well. You might also wonder if the gems would pressure Steven into talking to them instead of leaving, but based on what they learned in Snow Day, about Steven growing up and needing to handle adult responsibilities by himself, they'll probably agree that this will be good for Steven. Let him solve his own problems for now, in whatever way he sees fit. It would make a lot of sense and tie into continuity. But now comes the interesting part. Where exactly is Steven going to go, and how will it tie into his possible corruption? Well, there are two scenarios that I find the most likely, and here's how I imagine they'd play out. In this storyline, Steven figures that the best way to fix his emotional problems is just to let them all out as much as possible. All that anger, all that uncertainty, all that pent-up frustration, just let it explode out of him in one big burst. And the best person to help him do that is Jasper. He returns to her literal neck of the woods and says that he wants another fight. And this time, no holding back. He wants Jasper to provoke him, insult him, mock him about Pink Diamond, do whatever she has to do to get him angry so he can fight these emotions out. She happily obliges, eager to see Pink Steven at full power. They continue to fight as Pink Steven shows off more and more strong abilities. Eventually, they fight to the point where Pink Steven starts to fade and the real Steven starts to come back, feeling pretty exhausted. But Jasper is having the time of her life, not wanting this to end. So she unleashes one final flurry of insults and demeaning language, not only causing Pink Steven to come back, but for him to charge up his most powerful attack, the Diamond Destruction Laser. Jasper is standing right there, ready to take it on. But then the real Steven realizes what he's doing and starts to fight back, not wanting to possibly kill Jasper. Since this is a power that he's never used before, he restrains himself enough to slow down the laser's charge, but not enough to stop it. Eventually he realizes that there's no stopping it, so he bubble punches Jasper straight out of the way, encases himself in his own bubble, the laser goes off, reflects off the bubble, and bam! Steven gets corrupted by his own laser. How perfect would this be for Steven's arc? The ultimate last act of literally bottling himself up in the same way he bottled up his emotions, leading to the final stage of his emotional breakdown, transforming into a literal gem monster. Sounds pretty appropriate if you ask me. Not to mention how fantastic this would be for Jasper's character as well. I think the idea of Steven taking a massive hit for Jasper might be the perfect bridge between Steven's ideologies and Jasper's ideologies that might lead to her finally seeing things from Steven's point of view. I've heard theories about how Jasper might eventually come around, like for example Steven cracking her gem by accident and then healing it for her. But considering what we know about Jasper and her personality, I don't really see this happening. As shown in episodes like Earthlings and most recently in Little Homeschool, Jasper absolutely hates people belittling her or going easy on her. Kindness, consideration, healing, even just not punching her hard enough makes her feel like she is beneath someone. And that drives her absolutely nuts because she made it her life's purpose to always be on top. I imagine that Steven healing her gem wouldn't exactly be the big awakening for her, and would probably just go down the same way as when Steven tried to heal her corruption. She'd straight up refuse it because it would make her feel inferior. But imagine Steven tanking his own laser to save her life. At first, she would still see it as weakness. Like, he couldn't hit me with his full power, he's holding back, he's still soft. But after some self-reflection and maybe some clarification from the crystal gems, Jasper would start to realize what Steven has been doing all along. Jasper has always been a soldier at heart, with fighting deeply rooted in her purpose. A gem who respected other fighters who were on a level of power equal to her. So a fellow fighter taking a hit for her is an act of kindness that might actually make sense on her level. Protecting your fellow soldier is considered a very honorable thing, and instead of an act of kindness that makes Jasper feel inferior, like healing, this would be an act of sacrifice that puts them on equal levels. Like Steven respects Jasper so much as a combatant that he's willing to stand in front of her and take a bullet. It's not certain that she would think this way, but it sounds the most likely to me. Also, the idea of a Steven and Jasper fusion causing the corruption seems pretty unlikely too, since the spots left behind on the ex-corrupted gems are essentially just visual battle scars. They don't change the gem's voice or appearance or ability to function or even pull out their weapon. It's clear that they're just scars from previous corruption. If anything, it's a nice visual reminder that the past will always exist no matter how hard you try to wash it away. Take note, Steven. So after taking the hit, Steven gets knocked unconscious, and when he emerges, some gem energy emanates from his gemstone, encasing his entire body, growing in size, and then finally manifesting into a gigantic worm creature. Now, the powers and abilities of this new form could be literally anything, but in fitting with the story, I imagine that corrupted Steven might be able to influence the minds of others via a pink aura, similar to what he did in Reunited to help his friends and convince the Diamonds who he was. But this time, in his unstable, corrupted, and still emotional state, he would use this ability to influence everyone to act the way he wants. He'd make his friends need him again. He'd make all the gems forget the pain that Pink Diamond caused them. He'd make them forget the pain that he caused them. He'll essentially do exactly what White Diamond was doing by the end of the original series. Talk about coming full circle and tackling Steven's problems in the most eye-popping of ways. Because Steven's only used this pink aura ability once, the specifics of it are kinda confusing. Like, can he travel to this astral dimension at will? Does he need to be knocked unconscious? Maybe the corruption blast could knock his human half unconscious while his gem half is the one in full control, forming some kind of link to the astral dimension? It's hard to tell. Half human, half gem corruption is completely new turf for the show, so anything could happen. Now for the other possibility. Steven decides that it's finally time to visit the Diamonds again. Considering that they haven't really been mentioned or brought up at all in the series except for the intro, I can imagine that Steven doesn't really pay them a lot of attention and probably doesn't visit as often as he promised. Remember what I said about White Diamond in one of my previous videos? How she essentially needs Steven to function and is more or less lost without his guidance or instruction? Well, that plays a big part here too, you'll see. So Steven visits the Diamonds and tells them his situation. He asks them to take him into space where he can't hurt anyone and tell him every single bad thing that his mom ever did. No more surprises, no more outbursts, he just wants everything awful his mom did out on a plate in front of him so he can just soak it all in and be done with it already. So the Diamonds take him far away from Homeworld and Earth in the Diamond ship and start to explain to him everything about Pink Diamond, including some things that even the audience didn't know, which would further add to her character. Steven would start off okay, but eventually it would become way too much for him to handle. All the pink powers that were revealed so far start manifesting. His scream starts shattering the walls of the ship and even shorting out the electricity. He starts punching the walls and floors, practically ripping them to shreds. And a diamond dome shield slowly starts to form around him to shut him out from everybody else. The other Diamonds are far enough away so that they don't get trapped in there with him, but in a sudden move, White runs right up to him just in time to get inside the shield. She begs Steven to stop doing all this and to calm down, but Steven just gets more angry, telling her to get away from him. She doesn't comply and he forcefully screams, "I said get away!" And he fires his diamond destruction laser at White, who reciprocates with her own. In a beam standoff reminiscent of Harry Potter, Steven says that he doesn't want anybody to help him or tell him to calm down. He just wants everybody to leave him alone so he can think of a way to fix all these things. But then White finally speaks her own mind. She tells him that he sure did a great job leaving them alone for so long, never coming to visit, never checking in on them to say hello. Were they just a means to an end? A way to bring peace to the galaxy only to be tossed aside like yesterday's leftovers? Heck, the first time he comes to visit in so long, and he's just using them again to solve his own problems. White desperately needed him to guide her, and he wasn't there. And then Steven realizes, all those things that White just mentioned wasn't Pink this time, it was him. It was Steven Universe. He's the one that caused her to feel such pain. Remember how desperate he was to be needed? Well, she's someone who needed him, and he wasn't there. Devastated by this realization, he starts crying and falling to his knees, causing the aim of his laser to go off to the side, bounce off the shield dome, and fire straight back at him. And then the rest is pretty much the same. Steven's corrupted, giant worm, forgive and forget, yada yada yada. And the first character that his mind aura pink suggestion powers affect is White Diamond. She forgets all the pain that Steven caused her and all the bad memories of Pink Diamond in an instant. The pink aura she has in the intro and the way she's holding her head reflects Steven's pink aura wiping all the unpleasant memories straight out of her head. Heck, instead of an aura, maybe him looking directly into someone's eyes is how he wipes their memory. It would make sense with how his eyes flash in the intro. Now, both of these ideas are a little bit reliant on not knowing exactly how certain powers work, but hey, predictions simply involve taking what we know and coming up with ideas based on that. And in my opinion, this theory does have some interesting evidence to back it up, and could make for a great satisfying ending for this arc in Steven's character. Maybe it'll even end with him getting a corruption marking of his own, his very own permanent reminder that the past should never be ignored. It will always be there, and trying to hide it or cover it up will just lead to more suffering. You could even go all the way and make the mark appear on his eye, like people predicted with Cat Steven. He turned a blind eye to the past, and now he has a literal blind eye. I don't know, could be interesting. While I was very fuzzy on this theory originally, I'm really starting to see the appeal. And with much more Steven Universe future sure to come, I'm eager to see what's next for Mr. Angsty Teen Gem. I can't wait to see what the writers have in store for us, and hopefully we won't have to wait too long. Hopefully.
Hurry up!
Well, that's all I've got for you today. Tell me what you think of Steven's possible corruption, and subscribe for even more Steven Universe future and cartoon content on the way. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and I hope to see you all real soon.